You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to a very special bonus segment, video, whatever you want to call it, of Locked on New York Rangers. Not an official episode right here today, but I did want to talk a little bit about these rumors circulating on social media that the Rangers could be open for business, could be open to making a deal. And at the very top of the list, per Elliot Friedman, appear to be Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, both of whom have limited no-trade clauses, but not full no-move clauses where they can block a trade to every single team. Just want to share some quick thoughts kind of off the cuff here before, obviously, the Rangers are back in action a little bit later tonight against the Blues. First of all, let me just go ahead and read the Elliot Friedman tweet. This is on a separate screen. That's why I'm looking over to the side here. In the aftermath of their 6-2 loss in Edmonton on Saturday, the Rangers have made it clear that they are interested in making moves and shaking up their roster. Among the names indicated are Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, although other options will be considered. Now, this is something that obviously we're going to track. Again, Rangers back in action tonight against the Blues. Once we do a post-game episode on that, I think most of that episode, too, will probably take a look at the Ranger roster moves that they've made and this idea of possibly trading a big-name player, either Chris Kreider or Jacob Trouba. And we'll go ahead and we'll start with Trouba. The bottom line, I don't know how to say this in a nice way. Jacob Trouba just is not that good anymore. And honestly, looking at it as objectively as I possibly can, and granted, I didn't see him like every single game that he played with the Winnipeg Jets because I'm a Ranger fan and I'm watching the Rangers every single night. But I have to believe at this point, based on what we've seen since Jacob Trouba has been a Ranger, that even when Trouba was at his absolute best, I feel like there's probably a very good chance that even at that time, he was overrated to flagrantly overrated. I just don't know how anybody sees what this guy does on the ice and thinks, yeah, that's a superstar defenseman that's worth $8 million per season. You look at what he's done for the Rangers recently, his showing in the playoffs last year was atrocious. You've got this team this year that's turning in these lethargic, seemingly carefree kind of efforts, especially these last two games to close out the 4-game Western road trip there. And not all of it should be placed on Jacob Trouba, but when you're the captain, that comes with the territory, just like it does with the coaching staff, the people that are in power, the leadership group. Some of this has to fall on them. And the worst part about it is that under Jacob Trouba's leadership here, we're seeing the Ranger star players, the more established players, those guys are the ones that are kind of dragging right now. And it's the younger guys and kind of the role-playing guys that actually seem to turn in an honest effort every single night. With Trouba, you had the entire offseason drama. I mean, do we even open that can of worms again? I mean, it looks like they've got a trade in place to send him to Detroit, and then it falls through. And there's these rumors that Trouba might not report to a team that's not on his no trade clause, which to me would be in great violation of his contract. And then there's this idea that, well, his wife has her residency. And look, I'm sympathetic to the family and everything, but I've never heard of a contract like that where you can't trade somebody until the person's spouse, completes what they're doing. And certainly I'm not blaming her. The bottom line, Jacob Trouba just has not been good enough. And you watch the way this Ranger team carries itself right now, and it really does feel like they need a true blue shock to the system. And maybe moving one of these big name players, maybe moving somebody with a letter on their sweater is the way to do that. Jacob Trouba would be my top choice because, again, he's just not cutting it anymore. As far as what you would get in a trade for Jacob Trouba, you're not going to get much of anything. You would probably have to attach a sweetener when you consider how he's played in recent seasons, how he's playing this season, and just the fact that he's making $8 million a year. Like, what GM in hockey is going to give up anything to trade for Jacob Trouba? Nobody's going to give away a premium draft pick for that. Nobody's going to give away a prospect or anything like that. You would probably have to attach a sweetener to Jacob Trouba to get one team or another to take him off of your hands. But I mean, he's a liability, and I'm sorry. He's hurting this team every single game out, it seems like. And I tried to give him a clean slate this year, the benefit of the doubt and whatnot. And you know what? He just hasn't played very well. And it feels like whichever defenseman is on the ice with him, he tends to drag them down right along with him. With K'Andre Miller, he's had a shaky season too. He's been up and down at best, but he does play better with Adam Fox. We saw last year when Miller was paired with Braden Schneider, all of a sudden he started, seeing an uptick in his play. So I don't have any issues with the Rangers trying to move on from Jacob Trouba, even if it is a glorified salary dump, and even if there does have to be a little bit of a sweetener attached to Jacob Trouba. As far as Kreider goes, this one like this one hits pretty hard. You know that in the back of your mind that the Rangers are certainly open for business when it comes to potentially moving Jacob Trouba. I mean, it seemed like they were at the 0 hour there to strike a deal with the Detroit Red Wings this offseason to move him to Detroit. With Kreider, though, he can drive you nuts. I'll be the first to acknowledge that. And his play this season has been subpar at best. There's players on this team right now. And again, it's a lot of the star players that not only are they not playing well, like it's one thing if you go through a scoring drought, anybody can do that. But you just watch the way these guys are carrying themselves during these games, during the play, before the play, after the play. They just seem like they're in la la land. It just like the lights are on, but nobody's home. These guys are just out there going through the motions, whether it's Trouba or Kreider or Mika Zibanejad. Lindgren, I think, is trying as hard as he can. He's taken a beating over the years, and he just has not found his footing ever since missing, a handful of games to start the season. But there's guys that just, I don't know. Again, I think the perfect analogy is the lights are on, but nobody's home. And with Kreider, there's nothing there right now. I talked about in this most recent game how bad the Ranger power play unit was. He was right in the middle of that, not fighting for the puck, getting knocked off the puck by a guy that's 50 pounds lighter than he is. You're just not getting an honest blue-collar effort out of Chris Kreider right now. Now, I still, despite everything I've just said, would not be in favor of trading Chris Kreider, because if you trade Kreider, I don't see how you do that and end up with a better team because of it, right? Like, who are the Rangers going to get in exchange for Chris Kreider right now, where you lose Kreider, but you bring in somebody else and you say, okay, we're now a better team? I just don't know that a deal like that exists, especially when you consider the fact that we're in the middle to end of November here. This is not exactly hot stove season, so there's a lot of teams that aren't necessarily open for business right now. I'm just not sure how you're going to trade Kreider and find a player that a team is willing to give up in exchange for Chris Kreider and come out of it a better team. Because despite what everybody says, the Rangers are not going to rebuild right now. They're not going to fire Laviolette. You cannot fire another coach, okay? If you move on to your fourth coach in the last 5 or 6 years, whatever that would be, I mean, who's ever going to want to coach this team? At some point, it certainly falls on the players. But as far as trading Chris Kreider goes, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. And as crazy as he can drive you, Chris Kreider can still be a tremendous help to this team's chances once we get into the Stanley Cup playoffs. We've seen Kreider have some pretty unbelievable performances in the playoffs, namely that Game 6 against the Carolina Hurricanes last year, where he has the natural hat trick in the third period when everything was going south for the Rangers. That was huge. Kreider, and this is another thing too, he needs a little bit of a jump start here. And I do wonder if part of the reason why this report has leaked here, this report coming from the Rangers, that they're open for business and that two of the names at the top of their list are Trouba and Kreider, I do wonder if part of the reason why that's out there and why the Rangers would willingly leak this to the media is because maybe the Rangers, they're not like completely all in on trading one of these guys. They might be. I mean, I think there's certainly some smoke to this fire. But I wonder if the bigger reason here, the overlying reason for the Rangers doing this, is that they are trying to light a fire under some players on this team that right now look like they just don't care. And players that right now are turning in these lethargic, lazy performances. And there's probably people listening to this that, I'm certain that most of the people watching this or listening to this right now, probably Ranger fans, right? But there's probably some general hockey fans, listening to this too. And they're probably listening to me talk right now and thinking like, what, this guy's being tough on a team that's, what are the Rangers right now? Like 12-6-1, whatever they are. They're not off to a terrible start this season by any stretch of the imagination. I have the standings right here. Let me just check it out real quick. So the Rangers right now, 12-6-1. It doesn't sound bad at all. It sounds like a pretty nice start to the season. But when you watch this team play night in and night out, you can tell that something is lacking right now, that something is clearly amiss. Something is just off. There's too many players that are not giving you, their all on any given night. And so I think that's why a lot of Ranger fans are fed up right now. And clearly we're not the only ones, because if this report leaks to the media, and this isn't just some random, person on Twitter spreading these rumors. This is Elliot Friedman. This is somebody that's been doing this for a long time and has a ton of credibility. And again, where there's smoke, I think there has to be at least some fire. So if he says the Rangers are open for business, I mean, do you really think if you're Chris Drury and somebody calls up right now and wants to trade for, Trouba or Kreider, do you think he's immediately just going to hang up the phone? I think he'll at least listen to what they're going to say. And again, to summarize everything here, Trouba, I'll drive him to the airport myself, and I don't even care if the Rangers get anything back in return for him. Sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but that's just what I've seen from him over the last couple of seasons here. Kreider, not in favor of it. I think I would leave him here. Hopefully he can figure it out. Hopefully he can get it going. And the biggest reason why I'm not trading Kreider is I just don't see a way that you trade Kreider and then end up better because of it. This is a team that won the President's Trophy last year, and for all the struggles and all the things that have gone wrong right now, they are still, again, 12-6-1 to start the season. So they're not going to have some crazy fire sale here in the middle of November in a season where, at least record-wise, they're off to a good start. When you watch this team, you can tell, once again, that something is amiss. But, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where things stand. It's not all doom and gloom. We've got Brett Berard making his NHL debut today, or at least he's very likely to do that. Looks like he's on a line with Cooley and Mika. I'm intrigued to see that. A lot of people want Mika traded, but that's not going to work because he's got the full no-move clause, and nobody would trade for him right now anyway. But putting Mika between, two grinders, two hard-nosed forwards in Will Cooley and Brett Berard, I think maybe that's a way to get him going a little bit and keep him honest out there. Hopefully that's what happens. And Matt Rempe's going to be back in the lineup. I mentioned that in the last episode, too. This team needs a jolt. This team needs a spark. I think having Matt Rempe out there is a good way to do it. So I figure we can call it there. Again, this is not an official episode or anything like that. I just wanted to go ahead and share, my thoughts on, these rumors popping up that the Rangers could be open for business, specifically as it pertains to Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba. So with that, enjoy the game tonight. And whatever happens, we'll be back to talk about the result of the game and certainly more about the Ranger roster moves, and obviously these trade rumors surrounding Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.